you knock it off right now, it's gone! Moshahidi with room, launches! Kaboom! From another time zone. This is comical, cartoonish, and downright ridiculous. Welcome back for Season 2, Episode 9 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Last week was about predicting the NBA Conference Semis. I couldn't have been further off about those, and there's some more bad news for some of the higher seeds. This week, I'm also going to give a pretty substantial little rundown about some cool gigs I've been able to do recently. It's my show, and I can do what I want. Then I never thought I'd be able to say this in the year of our Lord 2025, but I'm going to wrap up with what could be the greatest resurgence I've ever seen in a baseball player, all unfolding this year. Vamonos. Now let me start by telling you about my weekend. Hang with me. It was a long weekend, but an awesome one, and one that reminded me why I ever chose to work in sports in the first place. The number one highlight for me was getting to commentate my first powerlifting meet. I mentioned that I had planned to do it during the last episode, I think it was, towards the outro, and the link to the full stream will be in the description of both this episode and the last one. It's a little bit over 4 hours long, but some people just love strength, and you can always skip around if you feel like it. This is sort of an expose on the sport of powerlifting, along with, my experience in it. It's a sport that I really love, and I've now been training specifically for at least the last 3 years or so. You may have recalled hearing back in October that I took the platform myself and competed for the first time, doing reasonably well, I would say. I'll link my open powerlifting page too in the description. If you guys haven't heard of that, that basically takes the results of pretty much every meet ever. And if you're like me and you can't convert kilos or pounds, go between them, even after a few years of practice, you can toggle between those and just see where everybody pretty much in the world stacks up. I've picked out another meet for myself to compete in this October. When that comes a little bit closer, I'll find out if there's going to be a live stream for it and let you, the wonderful audience, know where to find it. The whole idea I got to seek one out in the first place actually started by watching a national level meet from a federation that shall not be named, but I had some friends that competed in this meet, and in the non-primetime sessions, there was only an internal camera mic with no commentator. I was blown away by that. Honestly, kind of insulted, and if I were them, I would have been even more so. Think about that. You're about ready to get on the platform, and most of the time, your friends and your family and whatnot who's watching you, they don't really know what's going on, right? If I were competing on a national stage and not every person in my life was able to come and be there, then I'd be really upset to not have somebody explaining what I'm doing. Explaining how I'm doing relative to other competitors, telling them what the rules are, this and that. I would literally have gone to this meet, which was a number of states away, and covered those sessions for a pretty reasonable rate, probably far less than whatever they were giving the people covering primetime. So it became a money where my mouth is situation, and now I'm already looking for plenty of other opportunities to keep doing this. Strength sports are incredible. I watched a 65-year-old woman share the platform with a couple of teenagers, and they were all equally celebrated and elated over their own performance and PRs. I saw a ton of state records fall too, honestly more than I could count or remember at the time. People can transform their whole lives just by getting that iron addiction and sticking with it. That's the biggest part and where some people err, but sticking with it for many years. I want to continue to bring awareness to the sport. Inspired as I am right now, and with the tape from this first powerlifting meet under my belt, I want to even get into commentating other things, like there's Olympic lifting and strongman, bodybuilding, maybe not just yet, but at some point down the line, if the opportunity arose, why not? That's just how strongly I feel about the gym in general. That's my soapbox moment of the day. It's so easy to get super generic with the 24-hour sports news cycle and the fact that most everything has been covered before, right? I'll do my best going forward with this show to toss in more stuff like this, where I'm kind of the only one who could give my exact perspective on it, having commentated as well as been on the platform. Now, the other part of my weekend. On Mother's Day Sunday, trust me, would not have picked that out on my own. I started another gig with a pro ultimate Frisbee team as a PA announcer. PA is one of those things that a lot of people are not thrilled to do, especially young broadcasters, young play-by-play guys. I'm here to tell you that it makes you objectively better at play-by-play, and it causes you some general neuroplasticity, right? It just does something to your brain and makes you smarter. Now, the reason a lot of people probably aren't aware of this effect is that they don't know all of the things the PA guy typically has to do. There is an element of just reading stuff off of scripts at the proper times, of course. There's also opportunities for pure improv. That's a big thing that can separate the best from the not so good. There's making sure everyone else is on schedule and hitting their targets, trying to move along on-field events when things are dragging. Quite often there's running the game clock and or the scoreboard depending on what kind of event or game you're doing. That ability to do and think about a number of things all at once will make you better at literally any other job. You should ask for or go get the starting lineups yourself, so that can get you in front of coaches and athletes and things. You should get or make pronunciation guides, and if you don't get them ahead of time, you often have to go ask a coach or player directly, hey, say your name for me. Then finally, it's also voice training, just like this podcast is. You don't have to have the biggest, best voice ever, but it can't hurt. I've now been doing PA in the summers for 3 years, and I've dabbled in it going back all the way to my sophomore year in high school. If the math serves, oh boy, I don't like to do this, but I think that's over 9 years. That's all for my weekend, or at least the relevant parts that I wanted to talk about. I tell everyone so often, and you can see it on my resume, I do a lot of some things and a little bit of everything. Now, moving on to one of the great MLB career resurgences, I say hesitantly, that I have ever seen. I wonder, is that a word? Regardless, I'm going to describe a Major League Baseball player for you and see if you can figure out who it is. This player only managed to play in 80 games last year, then missed the latter couple of months with a hip injury. In those 80 games, this player was worth minus 1.1 wins above replacement, one of the worst totals in the league and by far the worst on his team. He struck out 69 times to just 12 walks, hit 184 with a 46 OPS plus, meaning he was 54% worse than a league average hitter, and he generally detracted from the team's success. Now, through the first quarter or so of the 2025 season, this player is on pace for tons of career highs, like average, on base, OPS plus, and WAR. He's made a position change and is absolutely excelling at his new position like nobody would have ever predicted. He's more valuable than players like Tarek Skubal, Freddie Freeman, and Juan Soto. He is 32 years old, and he should be well on the way to the best year of his career in every way, and he doesn't even have a ton of pressure on him to produce because he has a fantastic team around him right now. This player, of course, is noted center fielder Javier Baez of the gritty Detroit Tigers. I picked this topic out for this week because he had arguably the best game of his career on Tuesday night against the Red Sox. He walked once. That never happens, right? But he hit a 3-run homer in the 6th inning when the Tigers were down 4-3. The rest of this game was nuts too, by the way, and the game would eventually find its way into the 11th inning. The Red Sox would score a couple in the top of that inning, and then Javi came up one more time and got a slider middle down, golfed it out to left, flipped his bat oh so casually, and came in on a walk-off 3-run homer, tied a career high with 6 RBI, and it was his second ever walk-off home run, his first walk-off with the Tigers, and his first multi-homer game with the Tigers in year 4. Really, the most ironic thing about how insanely good Baez has been this year is that there are 3 other Tigers who might all finish ahead of him in the Comeback Player of the Year voting. Casey Mize and Spencer Torkelson were both the number 1 overall pick in their respective drafts 2018 and 2020. The franchise has totally righted the ship since then, right? They're not going to be picking number 1 overall for a really, really long time. But, unfortunately, both of those players had not been the kind of cornerstones that they were drafted to be. Mize's issues were mostly injury-related, as he missed all of 2023 and nearly half of 2024 with Tommy John and a back surgery. Boy, he was a mess for a while, and you always saw him in the dugout just, borderline depressed. He's trying to stay with the team and be super positive about it, but it's really tough to sit a season and a half. Torkelson had just really struggled with contact and plate discipline, and he had some pretty brutal strikeout numbers. Now, Tork is the comeback player of the year co-favorite with Jacob deGrom at plus 250. Baez is third at plus 420, and Mize is fourth at plus 600. The other guy that doesn't have current odds for comeback player of the year, but who should find his way on, in my opinion, a biased opinion, is Gleyber Torres, who has turned out to be their biggest and their best free agent addition. He's hitting right around 302, and he's one of the most well-rounded hitters in a really good Tigers lineup. This was really meant to be a diatribe on the insane comeback of Javier Baez, but the whole Tigers team's just too good right now. They have the best record in the American League, and I think depending on what the Dodgers do tonight, Thursday as I'm recording, have a chance to have the best record in the majors. Insane. Now, my bold prediction of the day is that deGrom fizzles out a little bit towards the end, or maybe he gets hurt this year again, and the Tigers are going to have all three of the top three vote getters for comeback player of the year. Next is the NBA Conference semifinals. Those are almost wrapped up. Man, Jason Tatum tore his Achilles in the Celtics Game 4 loss against the Knicks. I don't want to say it ended their season, because that ensuing Game 5, they absolutely put the hurt on New York. Although, man, it just got a whole lot more difficult for them to climb out of that hole. The worst part for Tatum personally is it happened so late in the season, and it seems like we see this with some star in some sport every single year. He's now got a decision. He'll now either have to rush his rehab, try and come back early and risk re-injury, or sit out the entire season next year and not be back out on the court till 2027. The Celtics are doing their best to avoid being demoralized. Maybe they've started turning their three-point shooting woes around, but without their best player, I'm just not counting on them winning 2 more straight. The insanity of the injury luck in general in these playoffs this year, I'm telling you, I thought the Cavs were going to put up some sort of fight once they got their reinforcements back, right? Darius Garland, he only missed games 1 and 2. Evan Mobley and DeAndre Hunter, they only missed game 2. Donovan Mitchell missed essentially 1/2, and they still got run out of the building at home by an inferior team on paper in the Pacers. By far the worst look of any team in this playoffs, the worst showing. But you watch, right? With Cleveland, they're still going to be top 3 in finals odds for next year because their core is just so solid, and this is kind of underrated. They're one of the few teams that can afford to keep everyone under contract for several years to come. They're 16th in payroll, and they have young stars at every position. They just happened to wet the bed at a very, very bad time in the conference semis this year, so that 64-win season, forget about it. I thought throughout the entire offseason and the first few weeks of the regular season that Boston was going to cruise and go back-to-back. Then the Cavs started 15-0, and they were looking like the juggernaut, and I was all in on them, but they slowed down in the second half. That was duly noted. The only team to consistently look like a championship team throughout the year has been the Thunder, and that has to be people's finals prediction now. I won't know at the time of recording who all is going to be in the conference finals, but we know the Wolves are in. They just took out Golden State last night, and we know the Pacers are in. Steve Kerr said he thought the Warriors would have had a good shot to win it all if Steph never got hurt. I like his attitude, but he is delusional. The most likely scenarios are, of course, that the Knicks are able to win at least one of the last 2 and beat the Celtics, and likely the Thunder are going to take care of business Thursday night and get past the Nuggets. I won't preemptively try to predict the conference finals again because we don't know who all will be in, so I'll just wait and do finals predictions when we get there. Now for the rest of the sporting world, we're halfway through the month of May. Our finest selection of things that are going on. The NBA draft still has a combine for some reason. Seriously, I'm sure the league could save millions from not holding it because there is so little coverage of it, and it's not at all like the NFL combine where it really affects who gets drafted where. Aaron Judge continues to have a very legit chance of putting up the greatest offensive season in the history of pro baseball, especially if he comes anywhere near hitting 400 for a full season. All of the odds and everything that we know about baseball today suggests that this is impossible, but at the time of recording, he is hitting 412, 15 home runs, and he leads the league in RBIs with 41. That's your triple crown. He also leads in OBP, slugging, OPS, WAR, a number of other things, and there's just no other argument for anyone else as the best player in baseball. People were already trying to argue that he had the greatest season ever last year when he hit 322 with 58 homers and 144 RBI. You're talking about all of the Hank Aaron seasons, all of the Babe Ruth seasons. Willie Mays, you name your greatest ball player of all time. This has a chance to be literally better than any of them ever did. Derek Henry just got a 2-year contract extension with the Ravens, valued at $30 million, with 25 of that guaranteed. You want to talk about respect. That is the third most money in the league among running backs, only to, as you might imagine, Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. Most running backs are out of the league before they ever get to their third contract, but more than probably anyone else in NFL history, Derek Henry is not like other running backs. I'm not certain what hasn't already been said about him. He went for 1,921 yards last year, and I just looked this up before this episode. That was the 11th most in a season of all time. It got a little bit overshadowed, of course, because of what Saquon did, and Saquon finished 6th in a season all time. But that wasn't even Derek Henry's career high in rushing. I mean, he ran for 16 touchdowns, too. That was the most in the league, even over Saquon. He's probably the one and only running back I've ever seen, at least to this point, that has a good shot to break Emmitt Smith's career rushing record. He would need 4 to 5 more seasons at close to this same level in order to do it, which after 9 years in the league already is super unlikely, but if he averaged 1,000 yards for 7 more seasons, he would break that record. If he were not 6'3", 250 pounds, and still one of the fastest RBs in the league, it's the long speed, it's the acceleration, and all of that stuff, I would have doubts about him getting there. But the Ravens scheme is so tailor-made for him. They have maulers up front on their offensive line. They should lead the league in rushing every single year as long as Lamar and Derek Henry are still in that backfield. I think the only big question for them is, when is Lamar getting his own contract extension? That is going to break the bank. The NFL schedule also came out this week, and the opener is kind of blah. I gotta pull back out the soapbox and campaign to get this changed. No one wants to watch the Eagles and Cowboys open up the season on Thursday night. The Cowboys went 7-10 last year and have not so many reasons to think that they'll be particularly improved. They had essentially 0 run game last year, and they didn't draft a running back until the 7th round this year, so either Javonte Williams or Miles Sanders is going to be getting RB1 carries. The Eagles are a juggernaut that got even better in the offseason. They nailed the draft again by most accounts, and by my count, they're returning roughly 20 of their 22 starters from the Super Bowl team that blew the Chiefs out of the water. The Cowboys traded for a wide receiver too, George Pickens. Okay, that might or might not work out, right? But even if it pays off and you get the best season of his career, it's not a massive difference maker. And they drafted a guard in the first round. Now, they needed that too after the retirement of Zach Martin, but boy, it's just not enough. Dak Prescott should be ready to go week 1, coming off of that avulsion fracture from the hamstring tendon tear last year. That just makes me shiver. And he should give the offense a boost, right? But they're still doomed to be one-dimensional. This could be a super lopsided opener. To get into the top 10 for biggest blowouts in a season opener of all time, the Eagles would have to win by 38 points or more. And for the all-time record, I think this is probably going to be out of reach. They would have to win by 56 points. Might go through the whole schedule next week and pick out specific games, whether they're obvious or not, that I would pick as good, game of the year candidates where, there's some really awesome storylines to watch in this one, or it's just great matchups. So that's all for Season 2, Episode 9. It gave you a goodly variety of stuff, but didn't go so much in depth to it. I'll try and get you out a little bit quicker, especially with the personal update toward the beginning. Footage from that powerlifting meet is also on my socials, which as always are as follows. Instagram, TikTok, Threads, @TheVoiceOfTanner, X, just Voice of Tanner, YouTube, the whole thing spelled out with spaces, and pretty much everything always ends up on my LinkedIn, sometimes to the point of oversharing, so connect on there too. This has been Season 2, Episode 9 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Thanks for joining me.
No.
Oh, you knock it off right now, it's gone! Mojtahidi with room launches! Kaboom! From another time zone! This is comical, cartoonish, and downright ridiculous.